It was just after dusk when I first saw it, that thing by the road. The sky was fading to that dim lavender between day and night, and the highway lights hadn't flickered on yet. I was driving home from my shift at the diner, half asleep and full of the heavy silence that comes after a long day. The road curved near the edge of Miller's Woods, a stretch I always found unsettling for reasons I couldn't quite name. That's when my headlights caught it, a figure standing just off the shoulder, motionless, as though waiting for something. At first I thought it was a person, maybe a hitchhiker. But then it moved in a way no human should, its limbs jerking in little fits, like a puppet whose strings had been tangled. That I slowed down. My first thought was that someone was hurt, maybe drunk, maybe in need of help. But as I inched closer, my high beams hit its face, or what should have been a face, and my stomach dropped. There weren't features so much as impressions, dark hollows where eyes should be, a mouth that didn't seem to belong there, too low and too wide. The thing tilted its head, and the air seemed to bend around it. I blinked, heart pounding, and when I opened my eyes again, it was gone. For a few seconds, I sat there with the engine humming softly, staring at the empty roadside. My breathing was ragged, hands shaking against the steering wheel. The rational part of my brain kicked in, whispering about tricks of the light, exhaustion, dehydration, anything but what I'd actually seen. Still, I couldn't make myself move. It was as if some invisible thread tied me to that stretch of asphalt. Finally, I pressed the gas. The car crept forward, headlights slicing through the growing dark. I kept glancing at the mirrors, expecting to see that distorted figure standing behind me. But there was nothing. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the world had quieted down again, too quiet. Even the crickets had gone still. I told myself to forget it, to chalk it up to fatigue and imagination. But when I turned off the ignition, I caught my own reflection in the rearview mirror, and for a split second, the shadow behind me didn't move quite like I did. That was the night everything started to change. The next morning, the ocean majesty felt quieter. Conversations in the dining room were hushed, eyes darting toward the windows that overlooked the water. The official announcement about the missing passenger was clinical and rehearsed. Despite an extensive search, Ms. Laura Bennett has not been located. Our thoughts are with her loved ones during this difficult time. No mention of how she'd gone overboard. No details, no explanations. Megan's table mates exchanged uneasy glances before changing the subject entirely, as though speaking of it too long might invite the same fate. Megan decided she couldn't let it go. She went down to guest services again, demanding to speak to the ship's security officer. The receptionist, the same young man as before, tried to placate her with polite deflections, but this time she refused to leave. After several tense minutes, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a crisp white uniform appeared. His name tag read Chief Security Officer Markham. He led her into a small, windowless office and shut the door. "You should drop this," he said immediately. His tone wasn't threatening. It was weary, almost resigned. When Megan asked why, he sighed and leaned in. "You've seen him, haven't you? The man in the suit." Markham's expression didn't change when she nodded. "He's been on this ship longer than anyone can prove. We've checked manifests going back 15 years. Every time a passenger in a certain section of Deck 7 vanishes, there are reports of him. Always the same description. Always near the victim's cabin. And it's never random." Megan felt her mouth go dry. "Then why not lock that section? Warn people." Markham looked away. "Orders from above. And sometimes the disappearances stop for months. We don't want panic." His voice dropped even lower. But the moment he starts watching someone, it's already too late. Before she could press him for more, a sharp knock rattled the office door. Another officer stepped in, whispering something into Markham's ear. His face drained of color. "Stay in your cabin tonight," he told Megan urgently. "Lock the door. Don't answer for anyone." He hesitated, then added, "If you hear the knock, it means he's already chosen you." Back in her cabin, Megan locked the door, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat on the bed with every light on. Hours passed. The ship groaned and shifted under the weight of the sea. Just as she started to think she might make it through the night, she heard it. 3 slow, deliberate knocks. Exactly like before. But this time, the voice that followed wasn't the man's deep monotone. It was her own voice, perfect in tone and pitch, calling softly, "Megan, let me in." Days passed, and I began noticing other odd things around town. Posters for missing people started appearing on the bulletin board outside the diner. A young man last seen hiking near Miller's Woods. A woman who never made it home from her late shift. All within the same week. The faces on those posters haunted me, not because I knew them, but because something about their eyes felt wrong, like the pictures had been smudged in that spot. I stared until Denise called my name, breaking the spell. That night, I dreamed about the road again. Only this time, it wasn't empty. The faceless figure stood there, and behind it were others, shapes that seemed half-formed, wavering like heat haze. When I woke up, the room was freezing. My breath fogged in the air, and my reflection in the window seemed to lag a second behind my movements. I turned on every light in the house and didn't sleep again until dawn. I started doing research, local legends, police reports, anything about Miller's Woods. Most of it was dead ends. But I did find one old article from 1989. Family disappears near Miller's Curve. Only car found. The picture showed the same stretch of road where I'd seen the thing. The police never found the family. They called it a cold case. Something about the story gnawed at me. Not just the similarities, but the date. The anniversary of their disappearance was only 2 days away. The closer it got, the more the world seemed to warp. Lights dimmed when I entered a room. The whispers grew louder, forming half-sentences. He sees, they murmured. He remembers. I stopped answering my phone entirely. Even my reflections started acting strange. Sometimes, when I'd glance at a mirror, I'd catch a glimpse of that other me, just slightly out of sync, smiling when I wasn't. Then came the night I woke to the sound of footsteps in my hallway. Slow, deliberate, dragging steps. I held my breath, waiting for them to stop, but they didn't. They came right to my bedroom door. And then, silence. When I finally got up the courage to check, the hallway was empty. But on the wall, written in what looked like ash, were 3 words. I saw it. I knew I couldn't keep pretending it wasn't real. The figure, the whispers, the strange coincidences, they were all connected to that stretch of road. I decided to go back to Miller's Woods, as insane as it sounded. I needed to see it again, to prove to myself that there was something there. Maybe then I could make sense of it. I parked my car at the same bend, the one where I'd first seen it. The woods loomed dark and dense, their branches clawing at the dim evening sky. I left the headlights on, the beam cutting a narrow path into the trees. For a long time, nothing happened, just the wind moving through the leaves. I started to feel foolish. Maybe it really was all in my head. But then, something shifted. The air got heavier, thicker. My ears popped like the pressure had changed. And from the tree line, a shape began to form. It wasn't walking. It was unfolding, peeling itself out of the shadows. Its body seemed made of smoke and bone, flickering in and out of focus. When it turned toward me, I saw those same dark hollows where eyes should have been. But now they glowed faintly, like embers in a dying fire. My knees locked. The thing raised its head, and the static in the air screamed. It was the same sound that had haunted my house. Suddenly, the headlights went out. Total darkness. My pulse roared in my ears as I stumbled backward, fumbling for the door handle. Something brushed my shoulder, cold and sharp, like the edge of broken glass. I threw myself into the car, slammed the door, and turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, then caught. I floored it. As I sped away, my rearview mirror filled with movement. Dozens of pale shapes lining the roadside, all turning their blank faces toward me. I didn't stop driving until I was halfway across town. When I finally dared to look in the mirror again, there was only me. But etched faintly into the glass, as though by a fingertip, were the words, "We remember you." The next few days were a blur. I barely left my house except to go to work. Sleep came in broken fragments, haunted by flashes of the road and the faces without eyes. I told myself to forget it, but the world around me seemed to resist that idea. Static followed me everywhere. The radio, the television, even the hum of the refrigerator. It all carried that same hidden rhythm, like breath. Then a stranger came into the diner. He was tall, wearing a weathered coat, and his eyes darted around the room like he was expecting something to follow him. When I brought him his coffee, he looked up sharply. "You've seen it, haven't you?" he said quietly. My heart froze. I asked him what he meant. He leaned in, voice low. "The hollow man. The one who walks by the road." For a long time, I couldn't speak. He told me he used to live here, years ago, and that his sister had vanished near Miller's Woods. He'd been searching ever since. It shows itself to those who notice, he said. Once you see it, it never forgets you. I wanted to laugh, to dismiss him, but the look in his eyes stopped me cold. He wasn't crazy. He was terrified. Before he left, he scribbled something on a napkin and slid it to me. It was an address, an abandoned house on the edge of town. If you want answers, he said, meet me there at midnight. And then he was gone. I stared at that napkin all night, torn between curiosity and dread. In the end, I went. The house was a rotting shell, windows shattered, the front door hanging by a hinge. Inside, I found the stranger sitting in the dark, candles flickering around him. He looked up when I entered. It's not a ghost, he said. It's older than that. It feeds on memory. I wanted to ask what that meant, but before I could, something outside screamed, a sound like metal tearing. The candles went out, and from the window, that hollow face appeared again. When I came to, the candles were out, the room silent except for the stranger's ragged breathing. He was clutching his head, muttering that he couldn't remember his own name. I tried to help him stand, but when he looked at me, I saw pure emptiness in his eyes, like something had hollowed him out from the inside. He whispered, "It took it. My memories. It's taking them." Outside, the night was unnaturally still. The air shimmered faintly, like heat on pavement, and I could see faint figures moving between the trees, flickering, fading, returning. Faces that seemed almost familiar, like half-remembered dreams. The stranger said they were victims, pieces of people who'd seen the hollow man and lost their memories to it. That's how it survives, he said. It eats what we forget. I realized then that I'd been forgetting things too, small things at first. The code to my phone, the name of my first pet, then bigger things, like my father's face. It was like parts of my life were being quietly erased. I told the stranger we needed to leave, but he shook his head. It's already here. The temperature dropped sharply. Frost crawled up the walls, and the air filled with that same static hum. I turned toward the door and saw it standing there. The hollow man closer now. Its presence warped the air, pulling at the edges of reality. Behind it, I could see flashes, memories not my own. A family in a car, headlights in the dark, screams. The family from the 1989 article. The stranger lunged toward it, shouting something I couldn't hear. The thing moved impossibly fast. One moment he was there, the next he wasn't, just a faint shadow fading into the floor. I ran, out the back door, through the woods, until my lungs burned. But no matter how far I went, I could still feel it behind me. Watching, waiting. I don't remember much after the blackout. I woke up in daylight, slumped over the desk, the monitors dead, the lights on again. My clock said 7:42 a.m. My shift was over. Somehow, I had survived the night. The walls showed no signs of damage. The cameras no longer worked, and the hole I'd broken in a hallway C was patched again, as if it had never been there. When I stumbled outside, the morning air felt unreal, too warm, too bright. My phone had 20 missed calls from the supervisor. I called him back, trying to explain what happened, but he interrupted me halfway through. "You're done," he said. "Don't come back. The site's being shut down for inspection." I should have felt relief, but instead, I felt hollow. None of it made sense. No one believed me about the tapes, or Henry, or the voices. When I drove past the building a week later, it was surrounded by caution tape. A sign hung on the fence. "Property of U.S. Health Research Archives. Do not enter." That night, as I lay in bed, I finally began to drift off, convincing myself it was over. Then my phone buzzed. A voicemail. No number. I played it, half asleep. Static filled the line for a few seconds, followed by a faint, ragged whisper. "Sector D. Open again." I froze, phone clutched in my hand. Then, faintly, underneath the static, another sound played, the slow, rhythmic hum of the elevator rising. And I swear, even from miles away, I heard it stop on my floor. By the end of that week, I was barely holding on. My thoughts came in fragments. The static had become constant, a dull roar that lived beneath everything. I started seeing the hollow man even in daylight, standing across the street, reflected in shop windows, lurking at the edge of photographs. It never moved, but somehow it was always closer. Denise showed up one night, worried sick. She said I'd missed 3 shifts and that no one could reach me. I wanted to tell her to leave, but the words came out wrong, slurred and broken. She stared at me like she didn't recognize me. Then her eyes darted to the mirror behind me. "There's someone," she began. But before she could finish, every light in the house went out. The static exploded into a deafening scream. I grabbed her hand, trying to find the door, but the air had gone thick, syrupy, impossible to move through. Shapes flickered in the dark, faces I almost remembered, voices calling my name in tones of grief and anger. Denise shouted something, but I couldn't hear her. Then there was a flash, a blinding burst of white, and silence. When I opened my eyes, I was alone. The house was empty still. Denise was gone. In her place, a message had been scratched into the wall. "He takes what you see." My hands were shaking so badly I could barely stand. I screamed until my throat was raw, but no one came. The neighbors' lights stayed dark. That night, I packed a bag and left town. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get as far from Miller's Woods as possible. But as I drove, the road stretched on endlessly. No towns, no signs, no end. Just the hum of static and the faint glow of hollow eyes in my mirrors. The farther I drove, the less sense the world made. Time didn't move normally. The sky shifted from dusk to dawn and back again without ever showing a sun. My gas gauge never changed. It was like I was stuck in some kind of loop. The same stretch of highway repeating itself, the same trees passing by like a broken reel of film. I tried turning around, but every direction led back to the same curve, the curve near Miller's Woods. The place it had all started. My radio crackled, the static forming words I couldn't quite make out, until finally a familiar voice came through. "Denise. Come back," she whispered. "You have to finish it." My throat tightened. "Where are you?" I shouted. "What do you mean?" But the only response was breathing, slow, steady, in rhythm with my own. Then I saw it. In the middle of the road. Waiting. The Hollow Man. Only now it wasn't alone. Behind it stood dozens of others. Pale, faceless shapes, flickering like dying film. I slammed on the brakes, but the car didn't stop. It coasted forward, headlights flickering. The figures didn't move. When I hit them, the world folded inward. I woke up standing in the woods, no car in sight. The air pulsed like a living thing. Around me, whispers circled, fragments of memory, laughter, cries. And then I saw them. Every missing person, their hollow faces turned toward me, mouthing the same words over and over. "You saw it. Now you are it." I fell to my knees, screaming, but the sound came out distorted, broken by static. My hands began to fade, transparency crawling up my skin. I could see through myself,